Hello crafters, Nicole here, and in this video I have a fun exploration of embossing paste with embossing folders. We're going to pair these two concepts with a great sketch and come up with some really unique designs. I hope you enjoy this latest Sketch Starters with Nicole. If you've been following my sketches for a while, you know I like to leave them pretty vague. So when you're looking at this one and you see this rectangle and circle close together, you're probably wondering exactly how that's going to work out. Well, really what I'm looking for here is a really interesting background area with a focal point, and the oval is the focal point obviously because it's on top, and that background piece is going to be a small rectangle. That leaves me a really large space to create something that looks a little more clean and simple, but might actually have a lot going on. So let's take a look at how this plays out. For this project, I've chosen two 3D embossing folders, the Mega Succulent and the Mighty Waves, and I'm going to pair those with some really interesting backgrounds I'll create with alcohol marker refills and the embossing paste. Now, this is a little bit of an experiment because technically the alcohol marker ink shouldn't really go with the paste, but it works in a very interesting way. For my first background, this is what the Mighty Waves folder is going to end up on. I'm using 4 colors. I have sea glass, dewdrops, ocean waves, and limestone. As you can see, I have them all done up in some embossing paste here, and I'm going to just mix them one by one. Now, as I'm mixing them together, you might be able to see that there's a little bit of colored grit in there. That's actually the alcohol ink that has kind of like gelled together, and it didn't mix fully with the embossing paste. It gives it a very interesting texture, and in some ways it almost makes it look like colored stone. So I've taken the first 2 colors here, this is sea glass and dewdrops, and I'm kind of mixing them together and just doing these vertical lines, kind of like ocean water, something like that. It's kind of the idea I'm trying to give it. When we add in the embossing folder though, that's when you're really going to see how those all play together. So now I'll take the ocean waves and pop that on the bottom here. This is a darker, more blue color. So I have like a sea foamy green now and a little bit of a blue, and I'm blending them together, allowing the colors to mingle. And then I'll take this last one. This is limestone. I wanted to have a little bit of a foamy look on the top, maybe even a stone look. So this really does look like kind of a combination of stone or a combination of sea foam at the top here. And now that I've got that in place, you can see it's nice and messy. The colors are blending. This just needs to go ahead and dry. For my second project, I'll be using 4 more alcohol inks. I've got Mountain Mist, Shadow Creek, Frayed Leaf, and Purple Wine. Now this is an interesting combination of colors, but I was really inspired by the idea of succulents here. So sometimes you see a really nice purpley color, and that's where this purple wine is coming into play. So I want this to look more circular in nature. And so I'm taking my palette knife and kind of just doing little dabs in a little bit of a circle shape. And when we do the embossing folder with the succulent, that will really pull that all together. For my second color here, I'm using Frayed Leaf, and I already have the Shadow Creek mixed up, but it seems a little dark to me, so I'm not going to use a whole lot of that. Instead, I'm going into the Mountain Mist to bring in more of a blue-green color in just a few little select places. So I'll go ahead and add these little dabs of color in a circular way, and then we're going to go ahead and let this dry. As you can see, there's lots of thick areas, and that's going to give this a lot of extra texture, but that also means that this needs just a little bit longer to dry. I want it to dry by air as much as possible, but I'll probably end up using my heat tool to give it a gentle nudge. Now that my first panel is dry, I can go ahead and start the embossing process. So I've got my Mighty Waves folder, and I'll go ahead and run that through my die cut machine. And as you can see, the results are really, really cool. There's lots of texture from the embossing paste, and then of course the texture from the 3D folder. So my next step is to cut this down into that background rectangle, and I'm using the rounded rectangles nesting dies to do that. And my oval piece is going to be from the Feathered Friends dies. It's going to kind of go off on an angle. Now that I've got them both embossed, you can see the really amazing results here. So now I can start working on putting this whole thing together. This background rectangle is going to go exactly where the sketch is indicated off to the right here. I leave just a little bit of space on the right hand side and make it a little uneven so that way there's plenty of room for that bird to pop in. I'm using some of the antique gold spray to do some gold splatter on the page, but I like to have a little bit more control, so I dumped a little bit out into a pan and I can just use a paintbrush for that. The bird needs a little bit more, so I'm going to add a little bit of espresso ink to make him pop to life a little bit. And while I'm at it, I'm going to do my sentiment as well. Now the sentiment comes from an unusual pick. This is from the Summer Swirls stamp and die set, but you'll see this one come back in the second project as well. So I stamped that off in espresso ink, and that will help match that through with the bird. And I'm just going to add a little bit of some blending here to make the bird a little bit more two-dimensional. And then because of the way that this die works, I've got all this great fringe at the bottom for the feathers of the bird. I'm using my pokey tool to just curl those edges a little bit and make the bird really come to life. So now that this piece is dry, I can go ahead and add in my sentiment and the bird. Now, here's the thing. The 3D embossing folder really does add a lot of height to the project. So if I try to put my sentiment on here and I want it to span all the way across, it might end up looking a little wonky if I just have one layer and I pop it down flat. So when it goes off the edge of the rectangular piece, it's going to kind of look a little weird, stuck down onto the white cardstock. So I didn't glue it down. And as you see here, I cut off the excess on the one side, and I'm going to go ahead and glue the extra strip underneath the first one. And this is a way to add in a little bit of shimming without having to put on something like a foam adhesive strip that is going to be way too thick. So I just keep shimming my cardstock until it gets to the height that I like. And in this case, I need like 2 little pieces. And I already know they're the right width because I've cut that entire strip. And I'll place them right behind, get them nice and lined up, and then add a little bit of glue at the back and get that glued down onto the card base. Of course, I'm trimming it as I go, and it's all looking really great. So just a little bit of glue at the end here, and that's going to pop that right down into place, and you can see that it comes across so much nicer. Instead of having it kind of dip down onto the card base, it sits nice and flat across the whole card, giving it a much more polished look. So then I just need to add on the bird, and he's only getting a little bit of glue on the tops of the wings, so that way the rest of the bird can be free to flap around a little bit, especially with those nicely fringed wings. I don't want those to be laying down flat, and besides, that would be a real mess with the glue behind those anyway. It doesn't need a whole lot, it just needs to be able to sit in place. So for the final touches on this, I'll be adding in some sequins. And of course, I'm going for my 3 sequence pattern. I like to do a very tight triangle with the large and smallest sequence on one side and then the medium sequence on the other side of the triangle, making the point. And I like to kind of dry fit them and figure out where the best place is for them. To be honest with you, I wanted it on the bottom side of the bird, but it kind of looked like poop to me. So I thought I had to find a better place to put the sequins, and I did off on the side of its head there. So now that I've got this sequence in place, I want to just give them an extra little press because those are going on to the embossing paste. And that's it. This first card is finished. Are you enjoying this video? Then how about giving it a thumbs up? I'd really appreciate it. For the second card, you can see that I got a ton of texture here, and that was actually because I did heat set the embossing paste a little bit. And I might end up with a little bit of a problem when I run it through my die cut machine, but I know that I'm only going to be cutting a small rectangle from this, so I'm sure I can avoid any yucky areas. So this is where the Summer Swirls stamp and die set is coming into play again. I've stamped off 2 of the ice cream cones, and I'm going to go ahead and color them in with my artist markers. Now, I thought I would try my hand at some no-line markering, and this is not something that I do often. I don't really feel that I'm super good at it yet, but practice is really what I need. So I thought I would go ahead and color these in without the outlines and see what I thought. I figure the worst thing that could happen is I could put the outline on afterwards and see how it looks. And if they look like crud either way, I can go ahead and do them over again. It's only paper. So as you can see, I've got all of my colors listed along the top here, and I'm taking a pretty methodical approach to coloring this in. It didn't take me long to color these. If I had taken more time, I think I would have ended up with better results, but I'll step back for a minute here and let you watch. So here's the thing. These turned out okay, but if I really wanted to add more detail to them, I should have pulled out my color pencils and added all of those detail and fine lines that I really wanted. But I really just kind of wanted to move on to the next part of the project, so I pulled out my obsidian black and went ahead and added in the stamped lines on top of the project. It turned out gorgeous this way. I already had all the shadowing in place, so really adding in the lines just helped everything pop, and it looked great in the end. So as I suspected, when I ran the embossed piece through my die cut machine, I realized that I was going to get kind of some yucky spots. But again, I was able to avoid that by cutting them out with the rounded rectangle die. So I'm going to go ahead and add on this succulent piece to the right-hand side of the card, again, just like the sketch is indicating. And that, again, will be that kind of fun background piece that's going to help these little focal point ice cream cones pop. I don't know that the two ideas necessarily go together, the idea of the succulent and then the idea of the ice cream cones, but the succulent piece ended up being so abstract that there's really a lot of ways that you could interpret it. It could just be a bunch of ice cream kind of swirled around, or any other number of fun summertime ideas. Actually, what came to mind for me was going through the car wash and seeing all those fun colors getting popped onto the windshield as you're getting your car cleaned. I wanted to make sure that I got the sentiment in just the right place, so I dry fit in my ice cream cones to make sure that I would have good placement between that and the sentiment, which is also coming from the Summer Swirls stamp and die set. So I've popped on the U here and get that down in some obsidian black. And then I'll be able to put the ice cream cones in place. I'm not doing any popping up here, so I can just add on some glue and stick them right back down where I had them. For my last steps here, I need to add in the rest of my sentiment, and this is going to say, "You are the sweetest." So I have it stamped off now on a little piece of pink cardstock, and that's going to go right across the ice cream cones and really bring this whole thing together. Now again, I am going to run into that issue where the embossing folder made the background piece stand up a little bit more. So I'm just gluing down in the center here, and then I'm going to give you a closer view of adding in those little shims. So here we are in an extreme close-up, and I've got a piece of that pink cardstock already doubled up on itself. So this is 2 layers of pink cardstock, and it's already cut down. They're like the extra ends from the sentiment strip. And as you can see, I just put glue on both sides and pop them right behind the existing sentiment strip. This gives me just enough height to make that strip go right across nice and straight without it kind of bending in towards the card base. So I already have the left side done, so I've got both shims in place and this card is looking fantastic. So for my last step here, of course, I'm going to add in some more summertime bling with some more gold sequins. And again, that tight pattern with the 2 on one side and 1 on the other, just opposite. So I've got the large and small on the left, and the medium size will be on the right side of the ice cream cones. And this really kind of helps frame the whole idea together. And with that, I have 2 more fun cards for my collection with some really cool embossing backgrounds. So what did you think of the techniques? Did you enjoy all of the possibilities that the embossing folders have now that you can add some embossing paste to them? Or perhaps you enjoyed the idea of a smaller accent background behind a focal point piece. What was your favorite part of this video? I'd love to hear, so leave me a comment down below. I'll be back soon with some more crafty exploration and, of course, more sketches. But until next time, happy crafting.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenews YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.